How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Whitney Webb has a very interesting video where she talks about what the US government is doing and why the US dollar is collapsing. And she gives some indication why the government might want Bitcoin and US dollar stable coins as the next world reserve currency. What they're doing in the background makes a lot of sense. What Trump said recently makes a lot of sense after watching this Whitney Webb video. And I think it's really important because we need to know what's happening in the deep state. We need to know what's happening actually behind the scenes and not what people are just telling us. Now, if this video makes you bullish, you can hit subscribe. You can also go trade the crypto market with a link to Margex underneath the video. If you haven't already claimed that airdrop and you've been trading on Margex, claim it. Just go to the airdrop page underneath the video and hit the claim button. Also, if you're bearish on the market, because we're falling, actually, right as I started recording this, it came out that the US government moved the $2 billion worth of Bitcoin that they had in a wallet. So freaking out the market a bit, as you can see here with us going down, 5% in a few hours. So kind of crazy. There's definitely some game theory going on. I also want to give a big shout out to Savvy Finance because I actually clipped part of their video for Whitney Webb. Part of that is because I think it's really good content and I think it's relevant too. There's a big sponsorship in the Savvy video, so I just cut that stuff out so that we could get to the really important stuff. If you guys like this, hit subscribe. Now let's get into the video.
To that is that it's important to keep in mind that when the petrodollar system has been, the standard for keeping the dollar the global, or reserve currency, the US has gone to war and killed millions of people to defend that. One of the likely motivations, obviously there's more than one, but one of the key ones in invading Iraq, I would argue, was the fact that Saddam Hussein, not long before the invasion, had started selling oil in euros instead of dollars and made a lot more money, showing by example to other, other OPEC members that they could make more money selling in different currencies than the dollar. And then, of course, you have the case of Libya in 2011, where Gaddafi was trying to move to a gold-backed currency called the dinar and was selling that to African countries, a lot of which either use dollars or they use, French financial stuff. And that's why you had the U.S. and France essentially lead that regime change operation with devastating consequences for Libya, which used to be the safest country in Africa, then became the most dangerous and has been cited as an example of or a reason for why immigration got so out of control in Europe after that point. So there are cases where the U.S. government, or rather U.S. empire, is willing to go to extreme lengths to defend the dollar. So the idea that they would just sit idly by and just let dollarization happen without having some sort of plan in the works, especially knowing that they couldn't keep this going indefinitely and that the world was going to move at some point to a post-oil economy. I think it's important to keep in mind that these people have been very serious and played very dirty and created insane instability just to keep the dollar the global reserve currency, because it gives a lot of advantages just to the U.S. And I fully feel that they intend to keep those advantages, even if it means a different system. And the big picture is that countries like Argentina and also Lebanon and several countries throughout the world have been targeted by economic warfare for a very long time. Argentina is a very good example. You could argue it began in the 70s and the 80s, and with the economic policy. I mean, when Argentina was a military dictatorship, some of the financial policies they adopted were completely insane. You had a neoliberal in power during the 90s who was very bad for Argentina, in my opinion, Carlos Menem. And then you had their economic collapse in 2001, which, again, you could argue was a direct consequence of a lot of those policies, both of the dictatorship and of Menem's presidency. And then you have the IMF come in and all these other entities. And what they try and do after the 2001 economic collapse is have Argentina engage in things like debt for land swaps, debt for resources swaps. And this has been going on not just in Argentina, but lots of, most of Latin America, arguably, for a very long time. And it's a resource grab. Yeah. And, some of what we allude to in this piece and what we hope to allude to in an upcoming reports and a book is that a lot of the people that I've written about and that Mark's written about and that we've written about together are the engineers of that expressly, and by blowing out Latin American debt in the 80s and 90s. It was a way to basically yoke Latin America to the United States and, or more broadly, a lot of the transnational economic interests that are based in the United States, like Wall Street banks, for example. They engineered a lot of this. And so the situation in Argentina now didn't just come out of nowhere. And obviously Argentina's central bank has a lot of the blame, but that also didn't happen in a vacuum. Presidents appointed the heads of the central bank that made those policies. And even someone like Milei, who's railed against the Central Bank of Argentina, put a former central bank president in a top post in his cabinet. So these are choices that have been made by politicians. As someone who's been and reported from the ground on Argentina and on Argentinian politics, the corruption there, they just don't even, there's politicians in Argentina that don't even try to hide how corrupt they are. It's just flagrant in some instances in a way like I've never experienced anywhere else in the entire world. So I honestly think that what's happening in Argentina, yes, those people may need stable coins because of the current economic situation, but I think that it was engineered to be that way. They were engineered into that position. And who benefits from that? The same people that I would argue created the solution and created the problem.
So if you were the US government and you knew that the system was failing, what would you do? Well, you'd probably try to become very pro whatever currency is the next system, or try to influence a currency that is not held by some other country. At least they're not the issuers of it, right? So what is out there that's decentralized that the US government can influence and buy a lot of right now? I think it's Bitcoin, right? It makes sense. And what Trump said was at the conference that they were going to be very pro stablecoin and then also be pro Bitcoin. But he did say that they would treat it as a good thing if other countries start to use US dollar equivalents on the blockchain in cryptocurrency. Now, he didn't say like USDT or USDC. He did say that there's not going to be any CBDC, but he seems very pro-US dollar cryptocurrency, which makes sense. But they're also buying Bitcoin. So if you can push for cryptocurrency, push for Bitcoin to be the next reserve currency, that would be very beneficial to whatever country is able to buy a lot of it. And the US government is already able to do that. And at the same time, they can still push for US dollar equivalents that would perpetuate the US dollar's reign for as long as possible, right? So it is fascinating to see what Whitney Webb has to say about this, because I think she's pretty much right on. I mean, this is a game of 4D chess. This is a game of game theory. I guess this is game theory right now. So if you want to go buy some Bitcoin, if you're bullish after this, you can check out the link underneath the video to Margex or to CoinW. You can trade on those platforms. And be ready. Be ready for this next cycle because it's going to get crazy. If you guys like Whitney Webb, let me know in the comment section below. I think she's very well educated. She really understands the deep state and what's going on behind the scenes. So I think it's important to understand what she says, because Bitcoin is game theory. Bitcoin is every dirty little thing out there that the governments do and the solution to it. Thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe if you like this video.